Ezekiel Sims. He was in the Amazon with my mom when she was researching spiders right before she died.
Hello and welcome back to A Stark Contrast, where we discuss the differences and similarities from Marvel Comics to their MCU counterparts. And we are your hosts, Geoffrey
and Dai.
Hello, and welcome back, everybody.
Howdy doody.
Hello.
Okay, so there's been a lot of chat
Yes.
and news in the last
Yes.
week and a half. So bear with us. We're gonna just jump right into it. Let's go, right?
Yes, because I am exhausted. Before we get, I just sat in near 2-hour traffic.
Woo, LA.
And because of the episode we are doing today, I have popped open.
Oh yeah.
I need you to do it too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this first.
ASMR. Yeah, especially given the topic of discussion.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna crack open this cold one that Jeff brought me.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
There it
that's a
goes.
nice one.
Okay, here we go.
A nice brewski for this recording.
Gonna need
Just
it.
something to take the steam off, you know?
Yeah, for real. Ooh, that's really good. Wow. Okay. So first up on the list, Deadpool 3 trailer from the Super Bowl dropped, and the film arrives officially July 26th, and it dethroned Spider-Man No Way Home for the most trailer views in a 24-hour period with 365 million views.
That is crazy. I mean, it is. I've rewatched it a good amount of times in the past week, and I'm like,
yeah,
this is an insane.
it's incredible.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And then because of that, I went to Nick's house. Me and my roommate, we hung out there, and we were just, we watched the trailer, and then we watched Deadpool 1 and 2 back to back.
Nice.
And I was like,
Josh
wow,
Brolin,
this
baby.
is really good. These movies are still good. And now I'm like,
Dono.
wow, now Disney is that. Now he's in the MCU in the next one. So it's like, what a
Yeah.
change of pace.
It's going to be absolutely and legitimately insane. So that's super exciting. Of course, everybody just absolutely devouring that trailer and already identifying Easter eggs. And so we've seen obviously some of the characters that are being revealed, including Aaron Stanford's Pyro.
Yep.
And then what appears to be Eliath
Yes.
from Loki.
Yes.
And then, of course, the TVA.
Yeah.
So much good stuff. Deadpool is definitely in a special segment of his own just because he's such a great character in
Yes.
that it is truly a role that Ryan Reynolds was probably born to play.
Yeah.
As silly as that might be, but he's such an iconic character, and the films are obviously so ridiculous, but they're so well done at the same time, which is, I think, very difficult for any other character to do.
Yeah.
So it's Deadpool season. I'm really excited. I can't wait till summer. It's gonna smash the box office.
Yeah. I love that it didn't I know people were kind of worried about when Fox was bought by Disney, and it's like, oh, Deadpool's now in the MCU. It's like, oh, are they gonna PG-13 him? No, it is a very, very hard R, and they didn't dial him back at all. I think you see that in the trailer.
Exactly, and I love that. They right off the bat, and again, that's just the trailer.
Yeah.
So
teaser
imagine-
trailer for that.
Exactly, it's a teaser trailer, so it's not even the full length trailer yet. And it's just that. So I'm sure the film is going to be absolutely insane. I remember when Deadpool 2 came out, my nephew was like, "Can I watch that movie?" And I think he was like 10
Oh my
at
gosh.
the time, and I was like, "No, honey, you can't watch."
Not yet.
This isn't me just saying you can't watch it. You actually cannot watch that.
Yeah.
Now he's older, so I think he's 16 now, and so he'll be able. No, he can't watch it. So he's probably gonna try and sneak in because I think at this point he's seen 1 and 2. But yeah, can't wait till summer. That'll be great. And so next on the list, X-Men '97. Man,
I know you're
officially
excited.
confirmed. Jeff, let me be perfectly honest. In that, okay, first, it is debuting on Disney Plus on March 20th. It is confirmed to not be actually connected to the MCU in any point, which does, of course,
fine.
That makes total sense to me. And it is a continuation of the original series from 1992, but I was teeming with excitement at first. And I say at first because my beloved Chris Potter is no longer Gambit. And so I don't know how many people actually know this, but Entertainment Weekly confirmed the roster in which the cast is appearing. And so a lot of the OGs are still around. Pretty much everyone who was willing to come back to the table and you know hadn't passed away because Norman Spencer, he was actually Cyclops. He passed away some years ago. And I believe a couple of other fellows passed away as well. But needless to say, I kind of, when you hear, oh, they're coming back, you think, oh, everyone's coming back as themselves. No, they're not. And so Jubilee, Jean Grey, and Gambit have all been shuffled around. And their previous voice actors are now new roles in the series. And so Gambit's old voice actor is now Cable. So that very much changes the dynamic in general. And so, yeah, it's interesting because it is still the same Rogue. So I'm kind of like, damn, they just really were like, now I feel it. I told a friend, I was like, so this is what the fanboys feel like when they're like, my childhood. I was like, oh no, my childhood. And then I was like, oh, I can't say that. but yeah, I'm still excited. I'm just not as excited because he is still in the show.
Yeah.
So I love that he's still there. But
it's funny. After that released, me and my roommate, we were like, I was like, did you ever watch this? Like when it was out? And he's like, I don't think so. And
oh, wow, really?
Yeah. So we put on the pilot, first episode, season 1, episode 1.
Trauma.
And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is 90s to a T.
Yeah. Embodies everything about the 90s.
Yeah.
Everything.
I was like, all right.
It was another era for sure. And it was also so iconic because, again, those costumes reflected in that show are still the ones that people want now.
Yes.
You know? That was literally 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm still excited. It's going to be great to see the show come out and see if where and how they continue. From the cast, again, like the fact that Chris Potter is now Cable and some of the characters they showed in the trailer, I get the vibe that they're going to follow this arc in X-Men Series 2 that was called Executioner Song, which is very Cable heavy. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get him that way. So that'll be good. But yeah, so that's the shtick with the X-Men, and again, it's debuting in less than a month officially. So yeehaw.
Yeah.
And then, in addition to that, Spider-Man 2 New Game Plus arrives in 2 weeks after the drop of this episode. And so some of the details actually merged today, I believe, including some of the accessibility features. And so they're releasing Hellfire Gala suits, which is interesting because Spidey is not really in the X-Men Hellfire Gala. Like, I don't know where they're pulling that from. Yeah, Bucky, tell him. And then there's new symbiote suit styles, which is going to be interesting. So will we see like some form of Carnage or something? Who knows? Okay. Change color symbiote abilities. So that's interesting. Ability to change the time of day.
Yay.
Yay. Yeah, exactly. And then Game Head's charity suits. So apparently the suits are not so great, but you can get those for $5. It goes to charity.
Sure.
No,
it's great. But yeah.
Other than that, that's all about.
At least new storyline.
Yeah,
that would have been great.
Maybe we'll see. I guess.
Yeah.
So March 7th, get your game on. Aside that, I found by accident PaleyFest. Loki is coming to PaleyFest in April. So for April Fool's Day, you can spend it with the God of Mischief himself, as well as the cast and the production team.
What's PaleyFest?
Do you not know what PaleyFest is?
I don't think I do.
Really?
Yeah.
That's surprising. It's based off of the Paley. It was the Paley Museum of Television and Film, I believe. And it used to be in Beverly Hills. I think it's still there, but I don't know. And it essentially supports the arts.
Oh, nice.
And so Paley Fest itself, they have held it at the Kodak Theater or in Hollywood and Highland area for the last 10 years or so.
Oh, wow.
And so every season, which is essentially every year, they have a suite of TV shows that they bring in the team to discuss the film or show. And so I've gone for This Is Us. I've gone for Walking Dead a number of times, like a bunch of different shows. And this is Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec was iconic because everybody came back. And it's a 10-year anniversary, so it was like chef's kiss. But I believe this is the first time a Disney property is actually coming through. Because if they were to do like WandaVision or something, that would have been during pandemic.
Yes.
So they wouldn't have done it, you know?
Yeah.
So I think this is the first time, and of course it's Loki because season 2 obviously ended so phenomenally that it makes sense for them to bring them in, or just popularity, who knows? But yeah, so it's almost sold out. If you don't have a ticket, you should probably check it out or go on StubHub or something. They are kind of crazy. You can get a mezzanine seat for about $50, but if you want to sit down in the orchestra,
yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. So get you some of that. And then also the Hollywood Bowl thing with the Infinity Saga is happening. I did some research. It's all packages. It's just all packages. It's part of their package, like summer package system. So they're $350.
Whack.
Jeff and I were looking at tickets in disbelief.
I don't want to see 5 shows. I just want to see that one.
I just want to see that one. And there are 3 dates. So it's like August 10th for some reason. I don't know what it is. Then a back-to-back August 30 and 31. I don't know if single tickets are available or will be, but there's also something
It's
else to look
whack.
forward to. I know. I really want to see it.
Ugh.
And then related but not related, I believe that the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse is coming around, or with the orchestra this time.
Yeah.
Last time it was Into the Spider-Verse.
Yes.
This time I think it's Across. So it might be the new film with Daniel Pemberton actually playing live for each show. I guess when I saw him, it was just a special one. But this run, he's doing the full thing. So the live orchestra thing is really making its rounds. So gonna try and look out for tickets for that. And last but not least on this list, the Fantastic Four have officially
what
been
a bombshell.
Hey! So this was announced on Valentine's Day itself, which is fantastic. And the film drops July 25th, 2025, almost an exact year after Deadpool. So the film is also switching places with Thunderbolts, which has now been pushed up to release on May 2nd, 2025. They go back to filming next month.
They do.
Should be a good time, although I'm a little concerned that they're still writing the script. But
hey man,
it is what it is.
Gotta push them dollars out, and
They got to do it.
people's schedules change.
Yes, exactly.
Actors' schedules change.
Yeah.
So
I keep knocking on wood because I'm like, dude, if they change it one more time, like Florence Pugh is probably out or somebody important is going to be out. And it's like, no, you got to leave them in. But back to the Fantastic
because
Four.
David Harbour is filming Stranger Things.
Exactly right.
The final season of Stranger Things.
Exactly right.
So
it's like,
you mess up that schedule.
Yep.
If you can't work around that schedule.
Yep.
He's probably his character can't be in there.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Which could be part of the last minute changes.
Exactly.
For all we know. But thankfully enough, we do have our Fantastic Four family in Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Eben Moss Bachrach. Is that how you say his last name? Bachrach?
I wish I knew.
Yeah, Bachrach and Joseph Quinn. Speaking of Stranger Things, Eddie Munson from season 4. Was that 4? 5? 4.
Something like that.
Yeah, the last season. he was the Metallica guy. Yeah, so
I like this cast.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely okay with it. Well, because remember, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, someone had dropped, like, this is who it is. And it was not officiated by any means, but there was a different person for both. I think it was Ben and Johnny.
Yeah.
They were 2 different people.
Yeah.
And so when they actually dropped that it's Eben and Joe, I was like, oh, actually, I'm good with that. I'm 100% good with this cast. How do you feel about it?
I mean, like it's you never know until like you see the movie and who's involved, and obviously it's Matt Shackman is directing it. He who did WandaVision.
Yes.
So
do you think it's gonna?
And then people were
were
were deducing from just that one singular post that they were like, oh, this takes place in the 60s.
Yeah.
Because of the magazine that
the time cover.
It's a time cover of
it's Nixon, I think.
Nixon.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, so it takes place in the 60s, the way that their suits are.
Yeah.
Because it's very like 60s cloth. It's not really modern MCU-fied.
Yes.
So
which I love.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, okay, what are they gonna approach this if it takes place in that era, the 60s, 70s? It's like, how is it, MCU canon, but it works because obviously Captain America First Avengers take place in the 40s. I'm so sorry, 20s. No, 40s. 30s, 40s. Captain Marvel in 90s. Yeah. And you eventually bring them to the modern time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm just curious to where the story goes and how they bring, that group of mutants.
Well, do you remember the line that Doctor Strange fed John Krasinski?
Yeah, did you guys chart in the 60s?
Yes. And so I was like, whoa, that could be an actual correlation, even though it is multiverse, so to speak. That same singular event could have been consistent across multiverses. And so if this takes place in the 60s, it could be the same event that Doctor Strange mentions, because he is technically from 616. So it all kind of makes sense. Not that we have to go there, but my theory is that it does take place in the 60s and they do their whole 60s thing. It's going to be amazing. And at the end or the climax of the film, or maybe after they've defeated the bad guy, whoever it may be, Galactus probably.
Oh yeah, I just saw that too.
They get zip zop zapped out of that time frame, or they get lost in space, and then there's a reemergence where they're brought back, but it's current timeline, which would I guess would be 2026 or 27.
Yeah.
By that time, so maybe they're time displaced in some way.
Yeah.
But either way, no matter what the treatment, I mean, it sounds fantastic. I'm gonna.
Nice.
Yeah, I know. Dang
nice.
it. I didn't mean to say it, but it does seem really like awesome. It seems like it's already got a strong foundation, and it'll be great.
It's excited for the potential of it, and it seems that all these actors are familiar with each other.
Yeah.
Never probably worked together. I don't know if they've all worked together. Like one with the other at another project, but that was a great rollout. All the actors posted on their Instagram. They tagged every, I like that. I like that to make even Moss included. Yeah. They had his picture as an astronaut. Yeah. So that like, so by the way, like this is who the thing is. Yeah. So you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love Vanessa Kirby.
Oh, she's fantastic.
I love her so much.
God, I'm going to keep saying fantastic. But yes, she was definitely the one that I was like, oh, I don't know if they can get her. But the fact that they did, she was, little known fact, she was my original pick for Yelena. Before they announced Florence Pugh, I was like, man, I would like to see Vanessa Kirby in an MCU film. And who would she be? I was like, well, she'd be the White Widow, because she kicks absolute ass. Yeah. In all the films that she's in. So, it's going to be interesting to see her as Sue, of all people, because she is an intellect and more of like a sort of mind focused character, not so much hand-to-hand combat. But hey, she looks great. I mean, she's going to look great. She's going to be amazing as that character. And again, like she said, like Marvel's like first lady, she really is. Sue Storm and the Fantastic Four.
That is a pretty cool title to have.
Yeah, exactly. So
she's English, right?
I don't know, actually. Maybe English or Australian. Because I was going to say,
so Vanessa and Joseph so Sue and Johnny are English?
It wouldn't surprise me considering the track record.
That'd be hilarious if they come out as English.
Oh, like actual English proper in the film.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. I could see it. But yeah, of course, and this is obviously a discussion that we can take on another day, but the talk of Pedro Pascal and his ability, quote unquote, to take on this role. And so far, like with the discussions I've had with people who are like questioning, like, oh, I don't know if he can do it. He doesn't really have me convinced. And I was like, and I ask why, and they're like, well, he's the it guy. And my debate has been, Scarlett Johansson was the It Girl. Florence Pugh is an It Girl. Jeremy Renner had just done the Heart Walker. A number of these people that have been casted in iconic roles in the MCU were all It people at one point.
Yeah.
And so they're not breaking the standard at all. And also the fact that, and I've seen every single one of these projects, but Narcos, Mandalorian, The Last of Us, and Game of Thrones, Pedro's been fantastic in all of them. And those are all his major projects so far.
Yeah. And then people say, I don't really see him as Reed.
Yeah.
And then did you see that that Zoom interview of how he remembers his lines?
Yes.
And then how it's literally psychotic, like the Zodiac type of thing.
It's incredible.
And then someone was like, "This is literally how Reed Richards' minds work." So I think he's gonna be fine.
I didn't even see that, but it's absolutely true. You know, and for those people who don't know, like they had a Zoom call with a few other actors. I think it was for BAFTA.
It might have been something for that. Yeah,
and
like that.
they were all the actors were sharing how they memorize lines, and of course, like Kieran Culkin and other folks are on this call with Pedro, and Pedro is like, "Yeah," and he shows a picture,
and it's just letters.
It's just letters. It looks like rune scroll.
Someone like people were saying oh, he's literally the Zodiac.
Yeah, because it looks like a crossword puzzle.
Yeah,
but he remembers it because it's the first word of every line, which is absolutely incredible.
First letter of each word in that
a line. Yeah, it's amazing. So good for him. I think he's gonna smash it.
Yeah,
can't wait. Very excited. And so for that, we probably won't even see. They probably don't even film until maybe April, May of this year, and then we won't see anything for that until next February. So probably Valentine's Day again. They'll drop a teaser or try to get Super Bowl. Yeah, exactly right. So we might get a double doozy. We might get Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four serve up. So we'll see. All that said, now it's time to go into our character study for today.
Oh yeah.
And I'm probably gonna go through this beer very quickly. But a reminder. We are not experts, and we don't claim to be. We're just a couple of nerds nerding out.
Yeah.
And in this episode, we are nerding out. Are we? Over Madame Web.
It's going to be the last time I hear that.
I know. I fully expect myself to never speak the words Madame Web ever again. But yes, we're going to tackle this character. And Jeff just saw the film.
I did.
Like 24 hours ago.
On
just
Monday.
A little bit over. Oh, Monday. Oh,
Monday.
What day is it? It's Wednesday.
Yeah.
So 2 days ago, Jeff saw it. I saw it on opening day with 8 people in the theater. And, you know, it has had quite a spectacle online. But before we get into all of that, because we're going to just jump right off the tracks with this one. That's going to be amazing. Madame, how should I just call her Cassandra? Like, what I don't know if I
think we can do Madame Web.
Madame Web. It sounds so weird. I feel like saying Madame Web.
Well, if you say Cassie, I just feel like
Lang.
It's like because Sydney Sweeney's in the movie, I'm gonna think Euphoria, but that's not even her character's name.
Right.
But
oh man. Okay. Madame Web.
Yes.
Madame Web. Okay, I'm gonna hold it back. Madame,
it's really wow.
Madame
it
Web.
is legitimately hard for you to not say
it's hard.
Madame Web.
It really is. And I did this to myself. You know what I mean? Like it's not even. Oh man. Okay. So Madame Web was created by Denny O'Neil, John Romita Jr., and Joe Sinnott. And so, as expected, she makes her first appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man, number 210, actually, cover dated November 1980. And the story itself is titled The Prophecy of Madame Web. Do you want to give guess the cover price for this? $19.80.
Oh.
So you've not done this one yet.
Are we in the trip dig?
Nah, not yet.
Oh.
No trip dig.
It's probably not till like the 2000s or something.
90s.
I will go 50 cents.
Oh, Jeff! 50 cents.
Woo! I ain't talking Curtis Jackson.
Exactly. So in the club. So 50 cents. You could get that issue for 50 cents when it came out in its heyday. And so, as far as graded versions of this comic go, I found on Shortbox a CGC 9.8 for a cool $2,850.
Oh my god!
So she's still worth, even though, like, you know, because
She's worth something.
Yeah, the last episode we did was Drax, and Drax, in culmination with Thanos and Star Fox and Kronos and all these other characters, it bumped up the book worth so much more. But Madam Web on her own is worth almost $3,000 at that near mint price. And it was very similar on eBay, 9.8 as well for $2,000. But interestingly enough, and this is how you know it's because of the hype, the fair market value for the comic is $700 to $1,000.
Whoa.
So people are like, yeah, that movie's out. I'm going to cash in. It's like, no, bro, you're not going to cash in. No one's going to buy it for $3,000 when it's only worth, at peak, $1,000. So good on you, I guess. The lowest I found on Shortbox was a CGC 4.0. You can get that for $80. Or 6.0 on eBay for $90. And then if you just want the issue by itself, no special grading, you can find it for about $100, $150 to start. Again, it's probably being jacked up. Probably going to see $300, $500 just because people think they can cash in. But, you know, so yeah, that's the cover.
It's so funny seeing the cover because she's old.
Yes. She's old.
Like grandma, like 70 years old.
Yes.
And then you just try to like, oh, that's Dakota Johnson, who's
exactly
young and pretty,
young and beautiful, right? And so I assume this is the first exposure to the character that you've had.
You caught me.
I'm so sorry. Because she's been in other media. I believe she was in the cartoon at one point, and not that she's had like overwhelming presence in pop culture in general, but that is genuinely what a weird way to like be introduced to her.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a feeling we're just gonna start riffing, so I'm gonna get all these facts out while we can.
Lay it on us.
So physical card. So me, myself, and I do not have a physical card, but I was able to find one with a proper introduction to this character. So from the 2021 Skybox Marvel Universe set, the information on Madam Web says Peter Parker thought psychics were a load of hooey before kidnapping at the Daily Bugle forced him to seek Madam Web's guidance. Not only did the blind clairvoyant solve the crime, she also figured out Spider-Man's true identity. So there's a lot going on in this card. Mm-hmm. Jeff is making like a face. It's rightfully so.
Not as exciting as you would think.
No, not at all. And also, there's a tremendous error on this card in that it says the Daily Bugle. So we're going to get into that in a moment. But I wanted to kick off this section, further introduction.
I just saw the listener comment. I just saw it.
From Marissa and April on Instagram. So many questions, like WTF. Which is super fair.
That's a very valid reaction.
Yes, because everybody is asking the same thing. Like, what?
Also, before we continue,
yes, go for it.
The things that we might say that criticize this movie, it's not to talk bad on the filmmakers, creators, artists that worked on this.
Great disclaimer. Yes,
I want to say that because we both are artists in our own right.
Yes,
and we know what it takes to create in each other's mediums.
Exactly right.
We are not bashing the artist involved in making this film.
Right.
We will always be team Sony sucks. Yes, I'll say that out loud. You don't have to say it, but I'll say it.
I mean, you saw my tweet, right?
They don't know how to run a movie franchise. Okay, we're gonna move on.
Yeah, so we're gonna move on. But yeah, as you see on this cover, Amazing Spider-Man with Spider-Man and Madam Web, but in the actual film, there is no Spider-Man. There's no Spider-Man anything. It's just Madam Web. But speaking of the comic, let's go ahead and get into her comic book origin. So, Cassandra Webb with two B's,
nice,
is indeed her name in the comics. It's not something that Sony just dreamed up.
Sure.
Also known as Madam Web. However, I will say as I tell this origin story, you're gonna be like, none of this happened in the film, which is absolutely true because they made up pretty much all of it. So let's go on and dive into this. So this issue, number 210, opens with Peter Parker and one of his then love interests. So this is a post Gwen Stacy death world for Peter Parker. This is when it takes place. It's like, I don't know, 10, 15 years after for us, but for him it's like four years maybe.
Yeah.
And so he's walking along with this woman named Deborah Whitman, who is also a secretary at ESU, where he goes to college. And so it's like a cold start. So they're already engaged in this conversation, and she's telling Peter about how she's interested in seeing this psychic named Madam Web. And she pulls out the business card, and he's like the trading card said, he's like, that's a bunch of baloney. Hooey. And so, but Deborah is interested in her in particular because she's apparently a specialist in the work of paranormal phenomena. So Deborah's like, oh, I would like to see this woman and see what she's all about. And so, the story takes place just as negotiations for the Globe, or the Daily Globe newspaper, the rival of the Daily Bugle, is about to change publishing management. And it's all part of this elaborate plan made by a man named Rupert Dockery. So if you rewind a bit, there are two newspapers in this world at this current time, in Earth 616, Daily Globe and Daily Bugle. And so currently, at this point, and I believe Eddie Brock worked for the Globe as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and so Peter Parker was working at the Globe at this time.
Oh,
he's not gone into the world of Daily Bugle,
the Bugle
at all.
yet.
Yeah, this is.
Are they the same? Are they on the same level?
I would say so. Maybe the Globe's even bigger.
Okay.
In a weird way, because it's, again, rival papers. And so Rupert Dockery wants to basically own and manage this business. He wants all the money, the so-called fame and such. Yeah. And so he concocts this plan for a group of hired hands to intercept the negotiations and then kidnap the woman in charge and sort of make it like she signed the company over to him and it was all done legitimately, and then he can print whatever he wants. He can, control the media, essentially. And so the woman in charge that is there, she's actually planted by the actual owner and founder of the Globe. So it's kind of a weird sidebar / side story in that the original woman is an older lady, and so she, for whatever reason, I guess is very vain, hired a beautiful model type to be her stand-in for this meeting. So Dockery and his men don't realize that they've kidnapped a decoy. And so that just adds more of a twist to the entire story that's unfolding. And so Spidey then, because this is Peter Parker is going to work essentially. Yeah. And all this starts to go down and he's like, great. Just great. It's supposed to be another day at work. Instead, there's a kidnapping unfolding. And so what happens? He becomes Spider-Man. He goes in pursuit of these guys kidnapping the woman. And for whatever reason, he's just not as nimble as he should be. They get away. Yeah. But when he's examining the area, he finds a similar, if not identical, business card for Madam Web in front of the elevators. And he's like, oh, this is interesting. Why would this be here? And so he then thinks, okay, there must be some connection with the kidnappers and Madam Web. So then he goes to find said Madam Web, and then he is immediately met with Madam Web herself, and it's pretty funny because like he enters and he's met with this insane look. Like, just imagine going into a room and then being met with this old woman on a spider-esque throne with a long, droopy dress that just kind of melts into the floor. And there's all these mechanisms that are hooked up to her. And so what essentially is going on is that the character has this. I'm going to try and say this as well as I can, especially with a beer in my system. She has myasthenia gravis.
As one does.
A.k.a. MG. And so that's, according to Google, it is a chronic autoimmune disorder in which antibodies destroy the communication between nerves and muscle, resulting in weakness of the skeletal muscles. Myasthenia gravis affects the voluntary muscles of the body, especially those that control the eyes, mouth, throat, and limbs. So, as a result of her condition, Madame Web sits in and uses that spider-looking apparatus to basically live. It's her lifeline. So it helps her breathe. It helps her just conduct in a manner that keeps her alive. It's a life support system for her. It just happens to look like a crazy spider thing. But yeah, so that's basically what the character's all about right off the bat. And so the clipping that Spider-Man found ended up belonging to Belinda, the model, who was actually a student of Madame Web's, and Madame Web's powers enlighten her, not of the specifics, but the details that has Spidey like actually believing the words that are coming out of her mouth. So she's prophesizing all these things that are about to happen, and Spider-Man has gone from a skeptic to like, okay, maybe she is onto something. Because the funny thing is that Spider-Man has precognitive powers himself.
Yes,
he spider sense, and so this is essentially her version, but she has psychic abilities instead. And so Spidey then goes off to save the day, which he does, as one does. But with all of this chaos happening, the globe goes under. The founder decides to just give up completely.
Yeah.
The newspaper goes under, and he's like, it's so funny because he's just absolutely like, there goes my money. Now I have to find another job. Because this is Peter Parker that's out of college or in college and a full-fledged grown man. And so he's like, gosh, what am I going to do now? And then ring, 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 the phone rings, and it's Madame Web. And she calls him up, and his first thought is, how did she find me? And so because of her powers, she was able to deduce that he is Peter Parker. She knew who he was despite never seeing his face. Obviously, she's blind, but her foresight and her psychic abilities allowed her to know his identity. So she found him, called him up, and then all she says is that, do not worry about your present financial situation. It will be resolved. Not precisely as you would wish, perhaps, but even as we speak, your name is being mentioned by the one who would employ you. And so Peter's like, okay. And then it cuts to this wonderful panel. Typical. I want to make the kid a proposition. His line is busy. Jesus, well, I'll keep trying until I get through to him. As sure as his name is Peter Parker. And then it says, his name is J. Jonah Jameson, publisher of the Daily Bugle. And this is the beginning.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Well, there's our clip for the show, I guess.
Oh, my God.
So she prophesizes that he's going to get a job with the Bugle. And so the irony that he's like on the phone with Madame Web, and Jonah is like, of course. His line is busy. Kids. I don't know how my voice works. It just does things.
I don't even want to attempt. That's how good it is. I can't even fathom.
Yeah, man. Again, it's years of Spider-Man in my blood.
I'll stick to my Kingpin impressions. I'll stick to my Kingpin.
Oh shoot! So yeah, that's the origin of Madame Web in the comics.
Dude, that is the most complete 180.
Yeah, can you imagine? Imagine day 1 through 10. And someone puts the comic on the table, and they're like, all right, guys, how are we gonna do this? And then they just
so you're saying they had this material,
yes,
and then they were like, oh, you know what's would be good? My mom was in the Amazon studying spiders before she died.
Exactly right. Did you hear anything about a paramedic? Did you hear anything about
studying
not
las arañas?
Exactly. Like none of that. None of it. But I will say, as we go along, there are some things that they pulled from, obviously, from existing lore that help the story a bit. Like they do pull things that obviously exist in some way. But everything else, they made it up. So essentially, the only part of the film for Madam Web that is actually true to what I just said is the last 2 minutes of the film where she's in the weird chair.
I have opinions.
Yeah?
I have things I want to say about that. The final 5 minutes. We don't have to do it now. We can do it later.
I'm sure it'll like when you
yeah.
Feel
Once we establish in this episode, like, because we just did our origin, we established the look, and we established the yes.
Yeah,
I have.
We'll get there.
Opinions.
I love it. I can't wait. I like quite literally told Jeff to hold his opinions for like in person because I wanted to savor them for like the first time live on mic. But yes, Cassandra Webb, Madame Webb, portrayed by Dakota Johnson in the Sony Spider-Man universe. First and likely last seen in 2024.
Damn.
I mean,
Damn.
let's be honest. Let's be honest, guys. That's probably the last time we're going to see that character. Unless Sony really, really gets their way and they get to make films for the
I'll
next...
say this. They ended the movie as if there was going to be a next one.
Hard, for sure. Like, a sequel was going to happen. Like, no. Morbius isn't even getting a sequel anymore. There's no way. I'll eat my words happily, but there's just no way. So, directed by S.J. Clarkson, God help her. Oh my gosh. And yeah, my first note as I posted on social media, oh God, where do we start? And so, quick rundown. She was more or less orphaned after her mother passed away researching spiders in the Amazon before she died. She's a paramedic whose partner is none other than Ben Parker. It was funny because I was going through the entire film hoping that they would just say Ben, and they never said Parker. But then they did, and I was like, well, damn it.
That establishes it.
Yeah, it established it like hard. I was like, dang, okay, it is really Ben Parker. Her powers are ultimately triggered by with the rising of Ezekiel and a trio of young teenagers caught in her web, no pun intended, but intended. And it's later shared in the film that the spider elders predicted Cassandra would be diagnosed with myasthenia gravis when she was born, and so
is that what they said?
Yeah.
Did they say that?
They didn't say it by its scientific name, but they did say that she was going to be born with
into something.
Yeah.
Yes, and then she'll come back for answers.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly right. And so then she and her mother were bitten by the spiders in the attempt to save both their lives. And then she's blinded after the main climax of the film.
I missed that.
I know. I looked down and I looked up and she was blind. I was
missed
like,
that.
What?
I was like,
yeah.
Because I saw when someone was like holding her, one of the girls was holding her, and her eyes were blue, and I was like, in my head, I was like, oh, her powers are coming in.
Yeah.
And then, but then they went to the spoiler.
Mm-hmm.
They went to the she's in the hospital and she's blind, and I was like, did I miss where one of the light from the light like sparked in her eye or something?
It must have been so quick.
Yeah,
because quite literally, I remember watching it. She got thrown into the water. She's like essentially drowning down, and then here comes
she gets saved.
Sydney.
Yeah,
yeah, and then she gets saved, and then she's blind. I was like, huh?
Oh, really?
So something must have happened underwater that like one of the things shot down into the water, and I don't know. Like, I'm honestly not sure. Yeah, exactly. You missed the second in that movie. It's a lifetime.
I will say I did like. I mean, this is coming from a guy who has no idea of this character, but of where she can be in multiple places at once during that end fight.
Yeah,
I was like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I enjoyed that. But is that accurate? I don't know. No. Okay.
Yeah, they made her cooler in a lot of ways. That I guess we'll get into a little bit, but not really. But yeah, again, they took a lot of liberties with it. They really try to jazz it up.
Yeah.
Given that they reeled back her age a bit, they made her, obviously she's sexy lady, you know.
She is a beautiful young lady.
Yes, and so they really changed her quite a bit, I think, and with the intention that they were going to eventually age her. Because, like, you have to remember, so if you didn't know by this point, this entire episode is going to be full of spoilers. So, just in case you intended on watching
I love
this
how
movie,
this is the one when it comes to spoilers. We're like, we
no
don't.
one cares. Yeah, no one cares.
That's fine.
Yeah, and so you have to remember that the film takes place in 2003. So, by that standard, she could be gray.
I will
she
say
would be
that
50.
I will say that was the most consistent thing about this movie.
Yeah.
They never wavered from and I'm like, why can't they just do? I'm like, oh well, they're in 2003.
2003.
That doesn't exist.
Exactly. And so there's that. So imagine, if you will, like Sony was thinking, okay, well, if we put this character at the specific time, especially with, again, spoiler, the birth of Peter Parker essentially being in this film, and then you age, he's 18 or so. It's 2003. You got 2021. Bada bing, bada boom. You insert the snap. I mean, it all makes sense mathematically.
Yeah.
So they've rooted this character that is 30, quote unquote 30. And so by then she's 30, 35, 50, 55. She would be gray. And so they probably thought, oh, well, the next time you see her, it's like, well, you might not get it next time.
She's a full-on psychic. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, it's a very interesting take on the character.
While we're on the topic of Cassandra and Madam Web, portrayed by Dakota Johnson.
Yes.
Dakota Johnson is not a bad actor.
Can you name something, and this is just an honest question, can you name something that you enjoyed that you saw her in?
Social Network.
Oh yeah, she was in Social Network.
It was very small,
Garfield.
But it was a very good scene between her and Justin Timberlake.
That was like one of her first.
One of her first roles.
Yeah,
and I rewatched the scene recently, and she's very good. With obviously because it's Aaron Sorkin, amazing writing.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And then I think I saw the first 50 Shades.
Yeah.
I think she's even good in that because her character is very timid.
Yes.
Anyways, in that film, in that trio of films, and so in that regard, I thought she played her character like she never dipped too low and she never went too high.
Yeah.
It was just like she did it right for that character.
Yeah, for sure. And she's consistent. I hadn't seen those films. I only saw the first one, and I was like perusing Max one day, and I was like, I'm gonna watch them all. Watched all three, and I was like, okay, it's not. Yeah,
and then she always has this like DGAF attitude, which is great too.
Right,
like she's very straightforward and very So, but for a superhero film, I feel like her personality of who she is not gonna come out in this kind of, at least when she's a main superhero film.
Would you call it dry? Is it dry or is it just not? I don't know what the word.
I want to say the word I want to use is monotone. Like it's one.
It's very flat.
It's just one level.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a fair assessment.
Like but you put her in maybe in a slapstick comedy, in a rom-com maybe. She'd probably kill it.
Yeah, like 50 Shades.
Yeah. So it's like it's not her fault. It's just like I don't know what that writer's room went through.
Yeah.
And I don't know who was breathing down their necks.
Because she did mention that the script changed after she signed on, so it's kind of like, oh.
And I don't want to blame the writers for that because the writers will write the best that they can do.
Yeah, exactly.
And then but at the end of the day, those writers have to send it back to the studio for approval.
And then the studio.
So you know damn well the studio said something and was like, actually, we need to include this. Yep. And you're kind of like.
Or remove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Oof.
Like I said at the top of the show.
Yeah.
not bashing
Yeah.
the creatives in this, but I said before we started recording, I just don't think Dakota had enough charisma,
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
as a main superhero.
Yeah.
And there was just a couple scenes where I was just like, I think the one scene that I can remember off the top of my head right now was when they were in the taxi. She saved them.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I don't know if it was from after the diner scene where
Mm-hmm.
she was like, yeah, you should be sorry. And I was kind of just like, this is awkward. I feel really awkward. Like, you can't just,
Yeah.
And I was like,
You girls, don't listen to me.
yeah. And I was like,
I told you, he's like following us. You have to, you're going to die.
well, yeah, you should be sorry. And I was like,
I know.
and I also felt some scenes went on too long than they did, especially the talking scenes. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, you can get the banter, you can get the small talk, but
Yeah.
I'm also like, okay, there's not much going on.
Yeah.
Like, it's cool to have like beats of like nothing happening.
Yeah.
But when it's happening for an extended amount of time,
Yeah.
it's gonna dwell.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, you can feel it. So
Awkward silences in
Yeah.
situations. Just like an overall awkward vibe many times throughout the film.
Yeah.
I will say, I think she did do her best when she was in the capacity of Adam Scott. Now, if that's
that worked.
yeah,
Yes.
if it's because Adam Scott is bringing out of her, sure, but it is a
Yeah.
scenario where it's like, oh, maybe she can't be leading. That's the problem, which isn't great because she's the lead character.
I see.
in the
I also,
film.
you texted this to me before I went into my showing.
Yes.
About their interactions or Dakota's interactions with Emma Roberts,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Yeah.
whoa,
Yeah.
this is rough.
I was going to mention this later, but that scene, there is a scene in the film.
The baby shower games really. I was like,
Yes,
what's
where-
going on here?
So for some context for those of you who are not going to watch this film, Emma Roberts portrays Mary Parker, Ben Parker's sister-in-law in the film, and she is very pregnant with what we suspect and obviously conclude is Peter Parker. They just never say it.
I never say the name,
They
man.
never say. Well, you know why? Like,
I know.
there's got to be some weird. Anyway, so Dakota, Cassandra, arrives for the baby shower, and they play the baby shower games. And one of them is like, what was it? Is it guess the name or
Yeah,
guess
it's
the
like
gender?
like Cassandra, what do you think the name's gonna be?
Yeah,
And it's just like,
it's so awkward.
it's
'cause
kind of
she's
just,
like,
she doesn't even say a name. It's just
yeah.
like,
oh no, it was like also it was like, oh, what is that memory of your mother?
oh, I thought that
Yes.
was, it's stuff like that where I
Yeah.
was saying, oh yes, this
Yeah.
is where Dakota Johnson's great. It's just this dark humor,
Yeah.
just cut to the,
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is.
and it's like Emma Roberts is like, oh, this one's blank. Who's this? And then she has no.
Yeah,
and
she's
then
like, oh, I don't know, my
Cassandra's
mom.
not even hesitant. She's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's mine. Or like, why'd you leave it? I was like, oh well, my mom died when I was born.
Yeah.
And I was like, if it was in a different context, I would have been like, that's freaking hilarious.
Yes.
But
It felt so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like genuinely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like, ooh, like, you know, it's supposed to be funny. The whole point is that it's supposed to be funny.
yes,
But the way that it's delivered in the scenario and the context it's delivered, you're just
Yeah.
kind of like, oh. And then she keeps going.
yeah,
And then they're like trying to issue her as somebody who's like, doesn't get along with kids and da da da.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
you know, to lean in more of the three
like she's
teenagers.
not supposed to. She's like, I'm not.
she's
I don't
not
have
maternal at all. I just don't buy it. I don't really buy it, and so that scene really stuck out to me because I was like, you can like Emma Roberts' awkwardness is so palpable. You're just like, oh yeah, I feel
Yeah.
that. I
Like
feel
Emma
how
Roberts
awkward it
in
is.
what was that MTV show that she was on? That's what put her on the map.
Yeah,
I forget the
I
name
don't
of it.
remember.
It takes place in high school and stuff, and like she's
Yeah,
like
like
that quirky, like awkward, like just great.
yeah.
That's what.
Yeah.
So that just, I was like, oh god. I was like,
It's
what's going on here?
A bit uncomfortable. So we'll probably get to more uncomfortable scenes as we go along. But I did want to share a listener comment, and so it is ironically from my friend who is named Cassandra.
Nice.
So she said, It's clever, but it should have been so obvious. Cassandra in ancient history was a Trojan princess who was gifted by Apollo to see the future. And then she went, "Peh, go away, Apollo." So Apollo acted like any big baby man and turned the gift into a curse. She can still see the future, but nobody would ever believe her. So that kind of lends more into the character being named Cassandra to begin with.
Yeah.
And it does fall pretty perfectly with this character.
It does.
In any fashion, yeah. It's very interesting. And I think it's one of those rare moments where the name actually does have bearing on the character. And so let's jump into aesthetic. So speaking of the look, so right off the bat, Jeff, I included Madame Web's final suit in the film alongside the comic book version, which in all honesty is pretty accurate, aside the fact that in the film she very much is blind, so she has the eye covering. She's wearing glasses that are very awkward and
which are hilarious, by the way.
Are kind of hilarious. Like, y'all can do it a little different. It looked silly.
Also, how did she get her suit?
Yeah.
Where did it come?
They never see
Where did it
anything.
come from?
All it is like it just comes.
I'm not
going to
talk about the last 5 minutes until we get to the end of this episode, and we have covered everything.
That's fair. But yeah, so we don't actually see the comic book accurate, quote unquote, like glasses until I guess the fast forward where she's with the three girls in their suits as well. That's the only time we actually get the visor. But before that, or after,
why is she in a wheelchair? Sorry.
You're good.
Sorry.
And so
she's blind. She's not freaking paralyzed. They had walking sticks in 2003. I'm pretty sure.
Oh my God, yeah. So other than that, they essentially kept the classic red and white with the black accents, both in the film as well as the comics. She's indeed wearing shades and eye covering, and even gets around in a weird futuristic hover chair thing in the movie. So yeah, that's about as similar as they get. As far as her actual features go, no, Madame Web, and I believe listener Chris said this, that I guess the fan casting was that people wanted Jamie Lee Curtis for this role because she does look, that if that gives you an idea of what Madame Web should look like, it's Jamie Lee Curtis more or less, short hair, grayed, much older lady. And so the fact that they got Dakota Johnson with her beautiful brunette locks and stuff, it's just very strange. But again, I think the intent was that, we'll just have her, whatever, be older in 20 years.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's not happening. That said, we do have a listener comment from Joe Liz. Does this have potential to be like Wiseau's The Room with cult screenings? So Tommy Wiseau and his... I did not kill her.
I did not.
I did not hit her.
I did not.
I did not. I don't know. People are saying that it's...
Sony better learn, bro.
I don't know that they will, man.
Like that whole thing when Morbius re-released and came back into theaters.
Morbin time.
Damn
Jared.
it.
Oh, Jared. Yeah. They don't.
I hope they realize that when the audience, it wasn't that we weren't laughing. They weren't laughing with you.
No.
They were laughing at you.
It was a very much.
And they were like, "Oh my God, the public loves this. Let's put it back."
No.
And you're kind of like, "This is not what they were saying."
It's not what they were saying at all. And I don't. I mean, maybe in like 20, 30 years, people will look back on this film and be like, "Huh, that was pretty funny." But I don't think everyone's going to go, this is we're going to have live screenings where everyone is acting. Like, I don't know. I don't know that it's going to be of that sort of, like, it's not a Heathers moment.
Yeah.
Or something that was really like niche and turned into something big. Like, this is just not great. I don't know how else to say it without being really mean. It's just...
Yeah.
Like, and again, it's not because Spider-Man isn't in it, and it's not blow to the creative team at all. It's just that I don't think it even has the cult classic value. You know what I mean? Like, even The Room, as bad as it is.
Yeah, I just want to know what Sony was trying to accomplish when they greenlit this.
In a world where there are films like Dune and Oppenheimer and Barbie, And this is what came to the table. Not that they have to be of that caliber, but the quality of the film, even like visually. Apparently, their budget was 80 million. So I'm like,
it's like I also think Sony is like, they're like, oh my gosh, the Spider-Verse movies are doing so
right.
well.
Who is having this conversation?
It's like, you know what we should do next? Okay, now we got to get this live action part right. Like oh, who should we do? Who can we do?
Yeah.
And it's like, well,
no, it's not working, man.
I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't know that there is a cult. I don't think there's a true cult following here. I think it's very much of the moment. It is the butt of the joke. Everyone wants to be in on the joke, and that's why everybody's talking about it. But this is in a film that's going to hit theaters again, and everyone's going to go, hot diggity damn, I can't wait to see Madam Web on the big screen again. Like, no one, let alone buy it. Like, I just don't think it's in. I don't think it's in the cards.
I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here.
I know, right? So, powers and paraphernalia. So, it is consistent as it is in the comics. Madam Web herself has telepathy, astral projection, psychic surgery. It is exactly what it sounds like. Mind alteration, clairvoyance, precognition, and immortality. And on Marvel.com itself, Madam Web possesses psychic abilities including telepathy, clairvoyance, and prescience, which is essentially foreknowledge. She can also perform astral projection and appear to others in spirit form. Madam Web is cybernetically linked to a spider web-like support system to attend to her bodily needs.
So I guess that was kind of like the end.
Yes.
The astral projection being in multiple places.
Where she's multiple places. And it's very much why, like, in my sort of diagnosis, I was like, it kind of gives a little bit of Doctor Strange. Because one of the aspects that the character does is that, like, she's kicked out of her own body in a way and out of her consciousness, and then she's able to exist on an astral form. So she does that as well as ×3, so she's able to project herself in multiple situations at once in the film. But in the film itself, they've listed her powers as capital M word, mutant physiology, prescience, clairvoyance, astral projection, poison immunity, and expert physician. So she is technically, even canonically in the comics, a mutant. Interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah. So
I just think, like, oh God.
They could see at this point. I'm kind of like, it could have been a really good movie, to be honest. It just wasn't.
I think it's the whole at the beginning, the spider, like she gets her powers from a spider.
Yeah.
And it's not even that. I think the spider, because like we all believe that because we've seen every Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
But there's also the fact of the tribe.
Yeah.
The Los Arañas.
That's the part that made me think it was like Twilight, because it was like very. And you've not seen Twilight?
I haven't, but I know the lore a little bit I know of.
Even in the first film, the treatment of the scene and the way that they film it, where they have this like very vigorous like speed to them, and they're just like dancing across the trees, is straight out of Twilight. Straight out of Twilight.
It almost took me out.
Yeah.
Just because it's kind of like, wait, so you're telling me that there can be like any spider, like this many spider people, quote unquote?
Right. And it also kind of, for a person that isn't, like, say you're just a movie fan, right?
Yeah.
And you only watch the Spider-Man films. You don't have any sort of deep lore knowledge in your brain.
Yeah.
This officially, like, it just completely pulls you away because you're just like, what? So Spider-Man isn't even that special anymore. There's a whole freaking tribe that existed 200 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think they threw everybody into a cold bath with this film, and not necessarily in a
so did
great
Dakota
way.
Johnson. Literally, she got thrown into the water.
Oh my god. So from there we'll jump into love interest. Spoiler alert: there are none on either side. So she didn't have any in the comics. She doesn't have any on screen, which usually I'm for, maybe it could have helped spice up the story. I don't know, but there isn't anything going on in the film because it is supposed to be a maternal take, supposed to really bond her to the three girls, which I totally get. So
yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah.
It's fine. But she does have an abundance of family, friends, and affiliations, at least in the film. So there is a character, her mother, that was in the Amazon researching spiders when she died. Constance Webb. She actually has no comic book counterpart. So again, Sony has essentially made up everything about this character's background until the last 2 minutes of the film. Everything you see before that does not exist in canon. So Constance Webb does not exist in the actual comic books. But in the SSMU, she is portrayed by Carrie Bichet. And yes, again, she is Cassandra's mother who was researching spiders in the Amazon before she died. And she's in her final trimester as she's in the Amazon researching spiders before she died.
Bro, what's up with the Amazon?
Yeah.
First Morbius, he went to get this special treatment. Yeah. And it was a cave full of bats. Yeah. And then now it's like oh, my mom.
Peru.
My mom was studying spiders in the Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just very funny. So she's essentially been chasing this lore because, and of course, you don't get why until the last arc of the film. It's because the mother was researching spiders that had special properties.
Healing properties.
Exactly right. That could heal her growing child in the womb, and she thought, oh,
that was another awkward moment for me.
Which part?
When Cassandra saw her mom.
Oh yeah.
With the diagnosis.
Yes.
I was like,
and she's like, I'm so sorry. I spent so much time hating you.
Die, please. Die.
I was like, you gonna drop a tear? No
Oh,
tears.
and then they hugged, and I was like, wait, can they touch each other like that? And like, if she's astral,
but she's astral projecting.
I was like,
yeah.
I just think I think it went on longer than it should have been. Like as an editor, I would have been like,
no,
I was like, okay.
I agreed.
It's like, I'm sorry.
And I almost feel like perhaps
it worked.
Perhaps the director was hoping she would give more, and that's why they just kept on her. But again, maybe the editor was like,
it worked.
It worked.
I want to touch.
I know. Yeah. It was. That was a truly awkward moment. And so, this is essentially, for those of you who have not seen the film and are not going to, is a part when Cassandra sees the breadth of what her mother went through in researching to try and find a cure for Cassandra in the womb. And then now she feels awful that she, spent all her life hating her. Is that what she said? She said hating you? Or
something like that.
Something like that, yeah. And
you know what, guys, just go watch it. Watch it on a matinee.
Yeah.
Spend like $2.50, $4.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Please.
And
run the numbers up for them.
Yeah.
Run the numbers up.
Get them over that 30 million line.
Like, come on.
Yikes. So there is no Constance Webb in the comics, all that said. I in the beginning it wasn't a strong start for me, I gotta say. I didn't really buy into anything that the mother was serving until the end of the film. That's just me, but yeah. Then next on the list, Ben Parker. So, I mean, shock to no one, there was no prominent crossover between Madam Web and Ben Parker in the comics because Madam Web wasn't even in the picture until well after a decade after Ben died. So they had no reason to cross over whatsoever. But in the film, Ben Parker is portrayed by Adam Scott of Parks and Rec and what is that other film show that he's in? Oh my gosh, it starts with an S. Why am I forgetting it?
Not Succession.
No. Oh God.
I know what you're talking about.
That film.
I don't watch it.
That show. It's a great show. I just don't remember what it's called. But yes, Adam Scott. He's such a great actor. In this film, he's a young Ben Parker that would. He is the uncle with all the fun and none of the responsibility.
I
quote
feel that.
unquote from the film. He's also a fellow paramedic with Cassandra. And he mentions in the film he's seeing someone that's pretty serious, and that is presumably Marissa Tomei's young Aunt
Even
May.
he doesn't say the name too.
Exactly.
And
Isn't
I'm like,
that crazy?
what?
He doesn't even say the name, which is so wild to me. I'm like, so they can't say Peter Parker, they can't say May, they can't say any of those.
Spider-Man?
No, they can't say any of it.
That Marvel that Disney contract is airtight.
It's like oh, you want to do that? All right.
Dare you?
Yep.
Dare you?
Exactly. And they've traded off some
That's
rules.
crazy.
It's so wicked. It's so wild. And so during the film, Ben's brother Richard is quote unquote out of town, but his sister-in-law Mary Parker, 9 months pregnant, portrayed by Emma Roberts. I was going to say Emma Frost for a second. Emma Roberts. And so essentially Ben is like sort of like her caretaker in a weird way, because spoiler alert again, she does go into labor more than midway through the film, and he's there when Mary's baby is born. And so I don't know that they're following this particular part of comic book canon, but Richard and Ben are brothers, and in the comics, Mary and May are sisters. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if that's 100% accurate anymore. But again, I always talk back about this title called Trouble, where they go on double dates, etc., 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 etc. And so Mary got pregnant, gave the baby to May, vice versa. I don't know. It's a mess.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they've introduced now both Ben and Mary into this situation, and we're like, oh, okay, so this is how it must have started.
It's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, this is...
That's the thing. It's like you introduce these characters and you know it can't go anywhere.
Exactly.
So it's like, why even bother?
And so, of course, like, you know, for those of you who are remotely curious, no, Uncle Ben does not die in this film because there's no Aunt May whatsoever. So this has to take place at least 2 years before they even meet or even get married. But yeah, the timeline's all weird and screwy. But we do have a listener comment. Another one from Joe Liz. Who did Adam Scott upset to be in this? And I'm just like, that's a curious question, because he is technically, if you ask me, he's the biggest name in this movie, aside maybe Sydney Sweeney. But Adam Scott is...
as of for tenure,
yeah,
of like long-term actors, yeah. I don't know.
Exactly. I yeah. Which, by the way, the show was called Severance. I just remembered.
Nice.
So yeah, I don't know. I hope he got
anything
his,
for a studio check, I guess.
Yeah, right. I hope he got his money. And I mean, he was do you buy him as Ben Parker is the question.
As a young Ben Parker? Sure, yeah.
Do you buy that Ben Parker was a paramedic?
No.
That's the interesting part, right? Like you buy the Adam Scott portion, but then I'm like, I don't know that I would see Ben as a paramedic. I don't know what I would see him as, but I wouldn't see him as a paramedic. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we'd never really know about his past life.
Yeah, exactly.
Just in general.
Yeah.
Because he's always Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
No, I do not.
Maybe we should do Uncle Ben one of these days.
He would just die 3 times.
Oh, God. No. Oh, man. And so this is the part where we actually get a little more, at least with the comic book side. And so Maddie Franklin, a.k.a. the third Spider-Woman in the comic books. She's the daughter of Jerry and Bernice Franklin. Bernice, who is presumably the sister of J. Jonah Jameson. JJ is also known as Maddie's adoptive father in the comic books. And so Maddie herself is a Spider-Sona who acquired her powers by supernatural means. Her name, Martha is her full name. Martha Franklin, by the way. So this is another like weird presidential area.
Martha?
Martha.
Why do you know that name?
Yeah. I can't believe BVS to this day. I can't believe BVS was real.
That name. Why'd you say that name?
God. So Martha Maddie Franklin, she joined Cassandra in a ritual known as the Gathering of Five. So in the comics, this is a pretty big deal. The ritual brought together these 5 arcane relics that bestow gifts or curses with their power. So when they're all put together, the recipients, there are 5 individuals that come together in the presence of these relics.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of the people will either be gifted or cursed with either power, knowledge, immortality, insanity, or death. And so while Maddie received the power, so she became Spider-Woman through these arcane relics, Madame Web received immortality. And then some guy named Norman Osborn received insanity.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So they're the 3 main players of those 5. And yeah, so that's I know you were like, earlier when I said immortality. And so this is the point at which Cassandra receives that. So she dies at first, and then she's revived and then granted immortality. So even though she looks older, she's probably much older than people even realize. And so that's the main thing that brings them together in the comics. Whereas in the film, Maddie Franklin, portrayed by Celeste O'Connor, again, niece of J. Jonah Jameson, she says at one point, she's like, oh, well, maybe I'm going to call my uncle or whatever, my Uncle Jonah. And I was like, ha, zing. And she's basically a sassy miscreant throughout the entire film. They're just like, look how bad and edgy she is.
Yeah.
She stays out late. She flips off people.
I like how also all 3 of them just had horrendous backstories.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Oh my gosh. Like, actually, I am so sorry.
Yes. What was Maddie's?
Her parents are rich.
Oh, yeah.
Parents are rich, but they had a kid, but they're like, well, we still want to live our life, so we're gonna still do all this philanthropy stuff.
Yeah, that pretty much suits it. And so, of course, Maddie is one of the 3 that Cassandra takes on. The second of which is Anya Corazon, a.k.a. Spider-Girl, a.k.a. Araña in the comics. And so in the comics, Anya's backstory is pretty dense, but she also received her powers by supernatural means. Long story short, she intercepted an attack brought upon a group known as the Sisterhood of the Wasp. And they were attempting to kill a man named Miguel Ligar. And so Miguel was a member of the legendary Spider Society.
That's
in Spanish.
Hilarious.
Yeah, in Spanish, known as Sociedad Araña, founded in 1099 AD.
Wow.
In medieval Spain. Yeah. So this is even further back than anyone imagined. And so he actually transferred some of his powers. Anya, when she was combating this Sisterhood of the Wasp, they actually delivered a lethal blow to her. She was about to die. And so Miguel transfers some of his powers to her, and then he empowers her to become Spider-Girl. And so she's been in a number of like cartoons and such. You'll always see her. She has like a ponytail, brown hair, sometimes auburn. She's traditionally has a black and white suit, very similar to the other Spider-Woman. And she's in like cartoons with like Spider-Man and Miles and stuff. She's all over the place. And so that's the same character that is also portrayed by Isabella Mercer in the film. And so, yeah, speaking of tragic backstories, she's basically a young woman whose father was deported, and then she was left to fend for herself.
That's crazy.
Which is so sad, yeah.
I mean, it's also like a reality for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
But oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was like, oh man. And so all these backstories aren't even embellished until they're in this like sleazy motel trying to get away from Ezekiel. Yeah. Yeah. And so this is when they divulge all their
which I totally didn't like mind. I was like,
no, not at all.
Because Cassandra was like, all right, let's take you all back to your like. 'Cause I don't want to be responsible for you guys. Right. I can't. And they're like, just go back to your parents, and then they give those backstories, and you're like, oh yeah, they cannot go back.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they're like Cassandra,
no
like
back to.
They're like Cassandra, like you have like you said he's trying to kill us, like we need you to watch out. And she's like, oh crap.
Yeah, exactly. And then last but not least, there's Julia Cornwall, aka the second Spider-Woman in the comics, also known as Arachne. And so she's more commonly known as Julia Carpenter. for those who are familiar with the character, and this is because of a marriage that she has in college. And she was actually introduced under the Secret Wars comic book title.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that gives you a little perspective of where she fell on the timeline. And so Julia herself gained her powers through a government trial. Julia was, quote unquote, accidentally injected with a serum made of from a mix of spider venom and exotic plant extracts.
Oh my
and
gosh.
This granted her powers similar to those of Spider-Man. Of all the Spider-Women featured in this film, Julia is undoubtedly the most important of them all because where the source material is concerned, if only Julia, because of Julia herself, she's the current Madam Web in the comics. So that kind of like, it's interesting because Madam Web, the Cassandra Webb in the comics, it doesn't feel as prominent as she probably could have been in a lot of ways. She does play a major role in here and there.
Yeah.
In I would say like a handful of storylines, but she's not like an overarching character that you would imagine her to be. Other characters kind of adopt her powers in a weird way, especially throughout Spider-Verse and such. But yeah, current timeline, if you were to read a comic right now and see Madam Web, it's Julia Carpenter. And so the catalyst for them, it actually takes place in a storyline called Grim Hunt, where the Kravinoff family, this is going to sound familiar, the Kravinoff family is attempting to resurrect a dearly departed Kraven. So his family goes out and they're trying to do what they have to do to ritualistically bring him back.
Yeah.
And so Madam Web is one of the casualties of the incident, and not spoiler alert, but trigger warning. Before her throat is slit by Kraven's widow, she transfers her powers to Julia in that moment, and then Julia has been Madam Web ever since.
Oh my god.
And so Kraven's children are all sent out, and they're all killing all these people. Just
Sounds
to
about right, though.
Get him back. Yeah, it's so
Good
crazy.
Lord.
It's very violent. Kraven has some of the most violent stories in the Spider-Man lore. So I mean, Kraven's Last Hunt. I mean, if the film, speaking of Sony, we're getting Kraven in October, so we'll see how that train.
Oh my god, that's right.
Goes off the trail. Yeah, dude. Like, oh boy, we may not have seen like the worst of it. So it can either be really great or really, really awful. And I don't know that I don't know. Radioactive lion bite, lion blood. Like,
hey man,
come on, man.
Cassandra's mom was in the Amazon studying spiders before she died.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know how this is gonna go. So, all that said, Julia Cornwall, a.k.a. Spider-Woman, portrayed by Sydney Sweeney.
Yes, sir!
SSMU. So her story was, I missed a little bit of it. So her parents are divorced or separated, right? And she has a stepfather who has the son.
Who has a family.
Yeah, they have a family, and she's basically like ostracized.
The outcast.
Outcast. Very much depicted as a sweet little baby of the three of them,
Yeah.
which is really funny. But she played it well.
I thought she
was
did.
Great. Yeah.
I had no complaints about it.
I actually liked all three of them. I liked the girls. I thought they did a great job playing their characters respectively.
I agree.
Yeah.
They did what they could have in the parameters they were given.
For sure. And unfortunately, yes, it is true. Like every bit of footage that they are in their suits is almost completely in the trailer. So we don't really see that much more of them.
Which I still have opinions on, which we will say at the end of the episode.
Okay. But they did, all their suits were great. The only one that wasn't accurate, I will say, was, again, Anya's, because Anya and Julia's suits are so similar in the comics that they had to really differentiate Anya in the film, and so hers, I think, is more gold and green from what it looked like. So, and of course, sidebar, Isabella Mercer is going to be Dina in The Last of Us.
Yes.
So holler at your girl. I can't wait to see her in that, because I thought she did a really great job in this film. I'm not familiar with work, but apparently she's Dora the Explorer.
Hell yeah.
I was like, wait, I don't know if that's the cartoon or like the film, because there was a live action film. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that was her. But yeah, I thought she did a great job and made me hopeful for her in The Last of Us. But as we inch closer toward hearing Jeff's unfiltered full review, notable adversaries. So I did not dare pull in anybody from the comics because, again, we don't see anybody in this film except for Ezekiel Sims. And so he has quite a dense backstory in the comics, one that's very interesting. Maybe we can talk about him on his own, if only because of the comics version. But not unlike the spiders mentioned before, Ezekiel also received his powers via a spider totem, further dedicating to protecting them by joining something called the Spider Society.
Jeez.
And then he created another sort of offset called the Web Corps, which is, like protect. It's almost like a front for the Spider Society to protect them and also have the same goal. But he did all this with the intent of just being wealthy. That was his end game. He didn't care about anything. He just wanted to be rich. And he thought, okay, well, I have powers. Let me just be rich and powerful. So
yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, exactly. So among the notable facts about Ezekiel in the comics is that he mentored a young woman named Cindy Moon, a.k.a.
Wow.
Silk.
Wow.
Yes. And so that's the only, again, for those of you who don't know, Cindy Moon is the only other individual bit by the same spider that bit Peter Parker in the comic books. So Ezekiel mentored her, and he actually, he's so deeply rooted in spider lore. He was at odds with Peter, then they kind of come together and with the common enemy who is Morlun. And so this is that sector of spider killers. Again, these are the vampires. They're not really vampires, but they, for spider essence, if you will. But they do have other common adversaries, including Gatekeeper and this other one called Shantra. So he kind of starts out as like an enemy, kind of becomes an anti-hero, and then he's sort of like more of a hero, but not quite. And so he's deeply ingrained in Spider-Man as a whole. But on the Sony Spider-Man universe side, we have Ezekiel Sims, portrayed by Tahar Rahim. Somewhat similarly, Ezekiel was driven by a thirst of power in the film, rising from the depths of poverty. It was funny because at one point I was like, why is brother like walking around barefoot? And then I remembered in the film, like in the comics, he's exactly dressed the same. He wears a suit, sort of like a suit, a three-piece suit, and he's barefoot everywhere he goes because that's how he uses his power to like cling to the ceiling and cling to the walls and such. But I don't believe he ever gets a suit in the comics. Yeah. I don't think he has a spider suit. I think he might have at the very end of his life because he is deceased in the comics now. But yeah, he never had like a full-on Spider-Man looking suit, which is also, I think, as funny. They're like, there's no Spider-Man in here, but we're going to throw a evil Spider-Man into this film. But yeah, so in the movies, he provided protection for Constance Webb as she traveled through the Peruvian jungle while seeking the native tribe of spider people known as Las Arañas. And then he killed her for finding the spider that she was in the Amazon researching before she died.
Before she what? Studying what in the what before she what?
Which, by the way, never made it into the film. The line was never in the
Pain.
film. Yeah, somebody made a great point, and I think I sent you that was a BuzzFeed or something. It was like, you know that Sony isn't listening or really paying attention because like to your point, they were like, oh gosh, everybody loves Morbius. Let's put it back in theaters. And then whereas the line was ultimately cut from the film, so it went viral. And then if they had left it in the film, someone was like, everybody would have cheered the minute she said it.
Probably.
And it's nowhere to be found in the final cut, which is like actually disappointing. I was like, wow, what's the point? And I think I have an idea of where it was supposed to be. I think it was supposed to be when they're in the motel.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
She's like looking through their stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, he had recurring dreams from the get-go, like in 2 minutes, 3 minutes into the film, he's having these recurring dreams of the spider women killing him. So I was like, I don't know about you, but I was like, wow, they just jumped right into that immediately. They're like,
I think they had to.
yeah, right. They're like, flashback here.
I mean,
the
movie needs motivation.
right.
So
yeah, true that. And so my last note on him was that he's a shoeless loser. Yeah, he was not a good man throughout this entire film. Very pursuant, very womanizing.
yeah,
Interesting character. I think ultimately what did not make this film for me was that he as a villain, not great. Not strong.
he had all the villain tropes, but you really couldn't, like, you just didn't believe it.
Nope.
I'm gonna express. I'm gonna say everything. I'm gonna say everything in one go.
And then I was gonna say we had a listener comment from Curly Insane Guy. Why?
Let me tell you. I'm just Let me tell you something.
So yeah, other videos.
I wish we could answer that.
Honestly, truly. Other than that, I mean, like, we're obviously gonna kind of cartwheel into our final thoughts, but I didn't cover any of the other versions or in other media just because, again, Julia Carpenter is really it as far as like other versions go. There is, however, a small reference to Madam Web proper in Across the Spider-Verse. There's a character named C. Webb with 2 B's, and I believe they're Sun Spider or something, and they're the spider that I think has the wheelchair.
Okay.
And so and so that's technically a throwback to Constance Webb. But that is the most we see of her in anything other than the animated series. But yeah, almost was. I couldn't find any solid casting options, but listener comment. We got so many comments for this one. Vibranium Queen asked, "Do you think this movie could have been better with someone else's Cassandra?"
I don't think so.
No. Huh?
I
think so.
James
too,
Gunn
actually.
said it best. Story and character trumps all.
Yeah.
Very basic story. Wasn't too many characters to develop. The writing was just. It just wasn't. It's just I don't know.
Yeah.
Are we getting into it? Are we?
we pretty much can. I will say, now that I have, like, and I said this to Chris as well, with Jamie Lee Curtis in my brain, I think I could see her as Madam Web in this exact version of the film, but it would have made it 100% funnier in a way that maybe shouldn't have been. Like,
sure.
It would have been very silly. Like, in a weird way, Dakota kind of like leverages it in that you know that you're supposed to believe it's supposed to be taken somewhat seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be like an action suspense film. But if
Sure.
Jamie Lee Curtis were in it, and this is also me speaking from, I've seen Everything Everywhere All at Once. I've seen Haunted Mansion. And it's kind of like, and of course, Halloween.
And Freaky Friday.
Yeah, everything. I've seen everything she's in. And so with that knowledge in my brain, especially with this era of Jamie Lee Curtis, I 100% would have thought this was like a goofy movie.
Nice. I like that movie.
Everybody loves that movie. Not that goofy movie.
It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite movies. It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
That's what I've heard, man. They had a live stage show version at a convention I went to. That's how popular it is. But not that goofy movie. But it would be like silly. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, because here you can go ahead and go, because all we have left now is the future of the character in the SSMU, which there is none. But go on, Jeff. I've been waiting all this time.
Okay, I'm prefacing once again.
Yes.
I am not bashing the creators and the artists of this film.
It's about this guy real.
Yeah. This is studio. Always.
Yeah.
All right, let's start at the beginning. One, they created this facade of a story that she's studying spiders, which, okay, cool, yes. I feel like it's a cop-out trope where someone's studying something because they can't find anything else.
Yeah.
On top of that, they added a tribe.
Yeah.
A tribe that is spider people.
Yeah.
And then when she gets saved by this tribe, you see this whole collection of the spiders.
Mm-hmm.
Like these spiders exists in the millions, but it's
Yeah.
only for this tribe.
Yeah.
You know? So it's kind of just like, oh, okay, so there's just 10,000 spider people that exist,
Yeah.
and they're just gonna stay in the Amazonian.
Exactly. Because let me just say, a typical spider can deposit as many 250 eggs into a sack. And then females produce up to 17 of those sacs during their lifetime,
Yeah.
producing 4,000 eggs. So it is quite literally millions of spiders. You're telling me, and this is where I get into like actual biology, you're telling me none of these spiders became invasive species anywhere else?
Yeah.
They just stayed in
That's
this
why,
very niche nook?
That's why the Spider-Man story works, because it was just this one spider
Right.
in the Natural History Museum
Ah!
that happened to get out.
Yeah.
Peter, chosen by Spider chose Peter Parker, and
Yeah.
then boom, Spider-Man was born.
Right.
But now it's kind of just like, oh, it's like when everybody has something.
Yes.
It's
exactly.
like, oh, you don't. It doesn't have a value.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Now we're going to moving on to the villain,
Yeah.
Ezekiel.
Yes.
Obviously, just doesn't hit the same.
No.
The confrontation between him and her name, Constance, like when they were fighting for that spider,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of fell flat for me.
Yeah.
He's like, no, we could save so many people.
Yeah.
And he's like, you have no idea
Yeah.
how long I've been searching for this.
Exactly.
Bah. And it's like, all right.
Which is also funny because like he's holding the gun, she's holding the jar, they're fighting for the jar. Somehow the gun, like the position, it doesn't actually make sense.
You know,
It
and
doesn't
then,
actually make sense.
the tribe comes in, saves her.
Yeah.
Boom. Then we go. There were a couple scenes, and you texted me. I don't know
Yeah.
if you texted me this or I had someone else send it to me.
Uh-huh.
Someone didn't ADR his voice correctly.
No, 100%. And I don't know if I think I did.
And it's
tell
like
you.
usually that's pretty.
Yeah.
And usually it's pretty hard to catch. But I noticed it,
No, absolutely.
and I was like,
I was
"What's going on here?"
There's multiple parts in that film where there are voices
It's not
being
matching.
heard and it does not match. And I think it's him, it's Dakota at least twice, and it's also Sydney.
There was a scene between him and the girl
Yeah.
who's, first of all, the girl who just works for him doing the NSA
Oh,
stuff.
I know. Like came out of nowhere.
So, okay, he was like, I pay you. And I'm like, who is this chick? And so there was a scene where they were talking. And I noticed one part where he was talking.
Yeah.
And then it cut to her reaction.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not really needed. Her reaction wasn't really needed.
Right.
So I'm thinking that they don't have his version, or it's not a good enough line reading.
Yeah.
So they just
They dropped
they
it.
they cut to her and put it on her,
Yeah.
and then he just recorded that line
Yeah.
so that it could be used off screen,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
him on
Yeah.
camera.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's going on here?
Happened a lot. And I think there's also this moment in the film where Ezekiel essentially beds a random woman he found at the opera who happened to be sitting alone.
I've been sitting
By
alone
the
and
way,
works
and-
for the NSA.
And works for the NSA, but also like their pillow talk. Like there's a line that he throws out, and you can tell homie's mouth was not moving. And I was like, wow, you really, because they were missing context. So they had to drop in the context to give you like why he was doing what he was doing.
Yeah, why he was like wanted to go home with her.
Right. Yeah. So that
Okay.
was a major one for me.
And then like the act 1, act 2 is pretty self-explanatory if you decide to watch the movie. I've said everything about like when it comes to like Dakota Johnson playing the character and how it's like she's not a bad actor. It's just this character is just not for her. Like her being in a superhero tentpole movie, in my opinion, just my honest opinion. But I think she's great in other things, and
Yeah,
she
just
killed
like
it in
this,
that. What
God.
else?
Oh my god.
Before I get to the last 10 minutes
Wow.
of the film.
Yeah, because then we go from there. It's just utter chaos. She's
Oh,
getting
the
each of the girls, the
train.
train.
And it's basically cat and mouse. The
Yeah,
the
100%.
movie is it's pretty much cat and mouse.
And then they had to do the recurring like the foresight at least 3 or 4 times before they were like, okay, you get it now, because they go through it. But I will say, they got me with one of the last ones where they made you believe that she had actually messed up. I think it was the diner scene before she gets to the diner.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
You full-fledged believed that it was actually what was happening, but it was a premonition.
Yeah, I did like, I will say, the progression of her realization of her powers.
Yeah.
Like the first time she was like, I don't know, I'm just seeing this on the tray. She was like, I don't know, I'm just seeing this, but I know you're gonna die. Come with me.
Yeah.
Whereas go to the diner, it's like okay, I have a plan. Like now, boom. Like let's do this again.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
And then she gets out, and in the third act, it's like pretty much her realization of power is like, you know what? I can like you can't be in it. You can't help them all at once.
Yeah.
And then she's like something like, I think I can. And then that's when she madame webs out.
Damn webs out. Oh, God.
So now we're at the end.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, I totally miss when she goes blind.
Yeah. I think everyone did.
The red glasses.
Oh God. Let me pull them up.
What? I'm like, you could have used anything else. You could have just.
Oh God.
Oh, in the hospital bed when all 3 of them are there.
Yeah.
She's blind and then the nurse comes in.
Yeah.
In like the most slapsticky like 2000s comedy type of thing where it's like she was like, are you guys immediate family?
Oh yeah.
And then Dakota Johnson, she's like, yeah, they're mine. And I was like,
yeah.
Crap. And then I was like, all right, cool. Like, I get it. I was like, okay, this is how. I was like, oh, yeah, she's blind because that's her character. And I was like, okay. And then, she goes home. She's in a wheelchair. First of all, wheelchair and the red glasses.
Yeah.
And she's in this nice penthouse. Where did she get this penthouse? Whose house is that? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me backtrack. Is that probably
Ezekiel?
No.
Oh, Maddie.
Maddie.
Maybe.
Possibly.
But they never.
But there's nothing's ever established. They're just in this nice.
They're just
nice
in this beautiful apartment.
And it's a window that looks like webs.
Exactly.
And I'm like, come on.
That's what I said on social. I was like, if you want a good drinking game, watch Madam Web and count every iteration of any spider thing. The web is everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
The curtains. They're like, look at these curtains. They're webby.
Yeah.
Look at this like silhouette of a window. It's webby.
Yeah.
The earrings. They're webs. It's like, Jesus. I get it's a spider movie, but also calm down.
And then lastly, it's like I forget if Sydney asked her, is like also like what's next or something like that, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then it comes with this montage of like, she was like, oh, like, I know all of your future's potential. Yeah. And then it's them in their suits and everything. And it's like, well, how did they get like, what's the, like how and why? Like you see them in their suits before even context. All you know is that he sees them in his dream, and I need to stop them. Yeah. But then it's like it just stops after that. Like okay, there's spider people, but how? Why? You can't just end the movie like that, thinking that there's going. Like you can't make a movie banking on that. Oh, there's gonna be a second movie for us to actually explain the 3 Spider Women, and it's like no. Might as well just explain that now and like why they're chosen. Yeah. Even if you don't see them in their suits. Yeah. Just say it's like, okay, well, why them, like why those 3?
And where did they get the power?
Yes. Because then the movie is just Dakota Johnson. Yeah. If there was no Madam Web like title on it, it would just be Dakota Johnson saving 3 girls from this creepy dude who wants to kill them.
From Bad Spider-Man.
Yeah. Which could have been you could totally wrap that in another story.
It's like the Fantastic Four scenario, the second one, the third one, if you want to call it the third one,
third iteration.
Yes, where Michael B. Jordan was Johnny Storm. Like it did not resemble a Fantastic Four film at all, and if at all, barely, because it just didn't follow any actual premise. It's like they had the elements, but they didn't work cohesively, and it again was like a vague similarity of what it's supposed to be. And I think that that's a lot of this film as well, is that it's a vague representation of what a Spider-Man universe film is, but it's not.
Yeah.
Because, there's all these factors that are completely missing. So it's like you're telling me there are millions of these spiders, but then we're also not going to tell you how these girls specifically get powers and why they get those powers. And there's no foreshadowing of how it could have happened other than they potentially kill Ezekiel.
And that's it.
And that's it. But then, again, now they're in... So Cassandra got bit by a spider in the womb to counter-react the MG diagnosis or disease that she would eventually have gotten otherwise. But after the fight with Ezekiel, she's not only blind, but she's also immobilized for whatever reason. And then she has the spinny wheelchair thing that was like a knockoff of Professor Xavier.
I was like, is she paralyzed?
I don't know.
Like, did the sign crush her?
No.
Like, I don't remember being like, oh my God, like she's not gonna walk. I just remember being like, oh, she's blind.
She just got blasted into the water and she was fine. And then they did the cheesy thing of like, everyone, let's help her, like with this resuscitation.
I will respect that, because I needed like a little foreshadowing thing of like, yeah. But I was like, did I miss something here?
No.
I was like, what's with the wheelchair?
I don't know. When she rolled on
because I didn't know that she was paralyzed. I just thought she went blind. So my first thought was like, why does she need a wheelchair? They have canes. They have walking sticks.
Nobody knows. And she's in the penthouse. So is there an elevator? How'd she get down? Is it big enough for
whose penthouse is this? Did she magically become rich?
Exactly. Like, where's this money coming from?
And it's like, and I know that the tribe dude, like now you're part of like this web type.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And I was like,
we didn't even talk about him.
Oh, the responsibility line we have not mentioned once.
What is it, Jeff?
Oh my God. Dakota Johnson's like, she was like, but I don't have the power or something like that. And then he goes, with responsibility comes great power. And I was like, I was like, God. I was like, there it is.
They just pissed all over that grave.
Bingo. Yahtzee. Our survey says.
Oh my God. I can't deal.
I was just like.
Oh my God. It's such a hard time to be a Spider-Man fan. It's so hard.
And it's like, okay, she's a part of this web. God, I really want to retire the word web at this point.
Right?
And but it's like she sees futures, and I felt, I mean, all you know from her parents is that she can see the future.
Yeah.
And then she can go back and redo it.
Mm-hmm. Or not even go back necessarily. She has foresight. And she has enough time to correct that course.
That's right. Oh,
she doesn't go back anywhere.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's.
It is
yeah.
It is interesting.
Yeah. Right?
Like, just very interesting.
I don't know if I said this. I think I said it to somebody, or it might have been just aloud to myself, but I was like, the more I talk about the film, the more I don't like it. At the time, I was like, it wasn't too bad. I still think it's worse than Morbius. 100% worse than Morbius. And that's not me being biased. That's me saying Jared Leto is a stronger lead than Dakota Fanning, than Dakota Johnson is a lead in their respective films.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. The more I think about it, I'm just like, man, if that film didn't have Sydney Sweeney in it, or maybe even just Adam Scott, like, I don't know what would have even, I don't know. It just. And also, very quickly, we reshared this today, or at least I did. The director is the same director that hails from an episode of Succession.
Yeah.
They also directed an episode
of
Daredevil from season 2, which is actually quite an excellent scene.
Yeah.
Or an excellent episode. And it's kind of mind-blowing because, in that token it's like, it isn't the director.
Which goes to show it's never the artist.
Exactly. So it's none of their fault. It really is kind of like whoever at Sony Pictures was like, this needs to be changed, that needs to be changed.
It's like, we need to include this, or this needs to be established.
They force-fed a lot of things.
And now you're asking these writers who have probably worked out a script for months,
So
and then for them to hand it over, and the studio's like, actually...
Do you think they'll ever release the original script?
Probably not.
I mean, the press tour itself was...
Interesting
to say the least.
Yeah.
Like, the girls seemed really excited. You did kind of get the vibe that they actually don't talk at all. Because they even mentioned, they're like, I think they mentioned in an interview, they were like, oh, is there anybody you got along with really well in the cast? And they were like, yeah, we're actually all like, we're texting a lot. Dakota doesn't read our texts, though. She doesn't respond to any of their texts. I was like, ooh. Not that everybody has to, but also, I was like, oh, wow. Probably didn't have to say that on mic.
Yeah.
But the entire run was, very awkward and strange. And I get why she feels the way she does now. I mean, it is kind of...
I mean, Dakota probably knows that.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, this is not gonna...
Yeah.
Like,
I heard she fired her agent after the first weekend.
Oh, really?
Because it did so bad. She was like, this is not good. Like, she really thought it was going to be something. Like, she probably didn't see the final. And she hasn't. I think she mentioned very recently. She's like, I haven't seen it yet. So,
yeah, it's awkward.
It's
awkward. It's just not a...
It's not tight.
It's just not... Yeah, it's not a cohesive story. No. It's a little all over the place, but it's just the small inconsistencies that cascade over throughout the movie, where you're kind of like, okay, like what...
Let me just say, if this film had actually been released in 2003, probably would have done a lot better.
I think it would hit.
It would have done so much better.
I agree.
But because, and again, this is, like I said, like the fact that it's in this era of where films like Dune and Barbie and Oppenheimer and even, like the Marvels is being released. Oof.
Yeah.
That's a tough sell, man. I don't know about that.
It is.
So, yeah, do you think there's even a sliver of a chance that there will be a sequel, or that she will appear in another film, or that the three girls will be in another film? And this here, friends, is why I don't want them to pursue Black and Silver. Leave Felicia Hardy alone. Like, do not continue.
I just don't see it ending well once this movie run is over in theaters. Yeah. It's gonna be a speck of dust in the wind.
Yeah.
Like you'd rather...
It's a fart in the wind.
Like you'd rather just let it move on, and then just hope, and then we got summer coming.
Yeah.
So just movies dead.
Question for you then, follow-up question. Do you believe that there is a chance that Sony will truly review what they have done here and like think about what they're doing moving forward?
I mean, if they haven't done it then, I don't know if they'll do it now.
That's what I said. I said that exactly verbatim to someone else. I was like, if they haven't learned by now, they're not going to.
Yeah.
And they're just going to keep running with it.
At least DC did something.
Yeah.
Like they recognized their mistakes, what they tried to do when first Avengers was coming out, and Avengers Age of Ultron. They were like, oh my God, we need to compete with this. So boom, 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 here we go. Superman film, boom, Batman v Superman. You're kind of like, and everybody at the time called it. They were like, whoa, what are you guys doing here?
Yeah.
And they were like, nope, we gotta compete.
Yeah.
And it crumbled within the last year, and until they took a hard look and they were like, you know what? That's probably what wasn't the right thing to do.
Yep.
You know who could fix this? James Gunn. And so at least, and so they're making, and then even Superman Legacy is in filming now. So, but that's DC. But hey, they looked in the mirror and they're like, all right, let's do this right.
It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
Yes, like obviously Sony. I mean, it happened in Spider-Man, the original Spider trilogy. Yeah. Spider-Man 3 with, they're like, you have to have...
Dancing Toby.
Yeah. You got to have that.
McGuire.
You got to have Sandman, and you got to have Venom.
Yeah.
Or you definitely got to have Venom. And then they're about to do Spider-Man 4 with Raimi, and then it was kind of just like,
Yeah.
I mean, every Spider... every spider thing they've done that's not animated,
Yeah. Well, because it's a different production house.
which says a lot.
Which I think people need to realize. Sony Pictures and Sony Pictures
Animation
are two very, very different
But
segments.
Sony as an umbrella, they're just like, oh my God,
Yeah.
we did like they're holding on to what is a Sony verse into the or Spider Verse,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh yeah, we can.
No.
And it's like,
it doesn't work in live
Yeah.
action. Video game, you're good. Animation, you're golden. Live action, you gotta leave it. You gotta let it go. Like, you gotta let it go.
like
Yeah. There's just
how are you
there's no
letting
fixing
this
it.
go through?
It sucks.
So if
I don't know.
they need to just when it comes to at least the Spider properties,
Yeah.
they either need to sell their IP, which they're not going to do,
Yeah.
or just come into agreement with whoever the powers that be to be like, you know what, we were wrong.
Yeah.
Do you want to take these properties,
Yeah.
make something creative out of it? Just let us handle XYZ. You can handle ABC.
Exactly.
So
I just don't know why they don't do it. It's so simple. You know what I mean?
like, it's so obvious too. Like, look what happened when you introduced Spider-Man in the MCU.
Yep.
A freaking hit. And Sony took all the credit for that because, like, oh, see what happens when we let them have our and it's
Yeah.
like, no.
Exactly.
It's not on you.
No. Yeah.
It's what they did for the character. It's what Feige did
Yeah.
for the character.
Exactly. It's so painful. So, I don't think there'll be a sequel. I don't think there's going to be a follow-up.
I'm gonna give it a resounding, respectful hell nah.
Yeah. If they dusted Morbius, like the sequel to Morbius, as I believe they have, there's no way. There's just no way. It doesn't matter if it has a higher Rotten Tomato score or critic,
It's
score.
not even that. It's eating money. It's eating money for
absolutely-
them.
Exactly.
Even
So
if you only made it for 80 million, it's still eating money for you.
it's 50 million they didn't make back, and that's just to meet that budget. You know what I mean? That doesn't even include.
And now at
everything
this
else.
point, people are only gonna watch it to be like, oh,
Yep.
is it really as bad as
Yo,
people say it
100%.
is?
And
Yeah,
then it's
because
just
you
gonna-
have half of those people are gonna say that, and there's other
Yep.
half people say like, I'm not gonna spend my money on that.
Exactly right. They're gonna rip the heck out of it. So yeah, I just don't see there is no future for Madam Web, ironically enough. Yeah, I don't know, man. I just don't know. But any other? No, you're dead. Jeff is done. He's already saluting. He's cut to the "We Are Groot" salute. I was gonna say I put on suggested reading. I just said nothing more than look. ... Read comics is what I'm saying, because the movie won't do you any favors. But as I mentioned previously, check out The Gathering of the Five and the final chapter, which is essentially 1998 Spider-Man around 440s, for the whole her gaining immortality, and as well as Spider-Man Grim Hunt, which is roughly around Amazing Spider-Man 630-ish. Which are two very good representations of the character, unlike the film. And then other than that, read her intro in Spider-Man 210. Really good stuff. And then the Julia Carpenter stuff is also really fun, especially when she's interacting with the modern day spiders like Gwen and Cindy and Miles. But yeah, so with all that said, that is the end of the show. Oh, thank God.
It's probably what you said. I was at the end of the movie.
Credits rolled. I was like, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. Okay, I gotta go. Thanks for listening. Next episode. So we're still weighing our options for upcoming episodes after this point. But some options do include Kingpin or even Sylvie, or maybe it's time for another X-Men. I don't know. So if you have any suggestions, let us know. And finally, thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. And we have a special We Are Groot salute to Tyler, Sherry, Ed, Andrew, Edgar, Ashley, Robin, Laura, Katie, Ariel, Nats, Jenny, Chris, Andrea, Melanie, Joe, Liz, and Eve. Follow us on social at STRKC and TRST. And if you like what you hear, please review, rate, and subscribe.
If you've made it this far into this episode, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We will catch y'all in the next one.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
You don't think this is weird? How we're all connected?
It's honestly like the least weird thing that's happened all day.